The rain hammered against the broken roof of the small, crumbling apartment the night everything changed for 12-year-old Aylar, a fragile girl with tired eyes, tangled hair, and a wheelchair that squeaked each time it moved. She had always known that life could be unfair, but she never imagined it could strike so hard, so suddenly, that her breath would catch and her heart would pound as if trying to escape her chest. Her mother, Miriam, had collapsed on the kitchen floor for the second time that month, her hands trembling, her voice barely a whisper. Aylar, her legs too weak to stand and too stiff to move, dragged herself across the floor to reach her mother, praying she would open her eyes. When the ambulance came and the neighbors gathered in the corridor, the girl felt the sting of helplessness like a blade. She was powerless, broken, and terrified, and she didn't even know that at that very moment, a billionaire named Zayden Hart, cold to the world, untouched by emotion for years, was making a decision that would eventually collide with her life in the most unexpected way. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and humanity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps bring more stories like this to people who need them. Aylar had not always used a wheelchair. When she was 7, a reckless driver rushing to beat a red light had changed everything. She remembered the sound first, metal folding, glass shattering, her mother's cry echoing like a fading dream. She had woken up in a hospital bed with her small legs numb and doctors murmuring about spinal damage. Since then, Miriam had worked 2, sometimes 3, jobs to afford the medications, physical therapy sessions, and basic needs. But poverty has a way of gnawing at even the strongest hearts, and Miriam's health had slowly weakened from exhaustion, skipped meals, and endless nights of worry. Despite everything, she smiled at her daughter every morning, promising that their pain was temporary, promising that one day things would get better, even when nothing ever did. On the other side of the city, Zayden Hart lived in a mansion as vast as a small country. At 43, he was worth billions, but his wealth felt strangely hollow. His wife had passed away years ago, leaving him emotionally frozen. His mansion echoed with silence. His success felt mechanical. His life ran on numbers, meetings, and transactions, but not on connection. His philanthropic board often suggested that he adopt a child to soften his image for upcoming charity campaigns. He rejected the idea repeatedly, until one afternoon he visited a children's rehabilitation center for a scheduled donation announcement. That was where he first saw Aylar. She wasn't surrounded by cheerful volunteers or playful children. Instead, she sat alone by a window, her thin hands resting on the worn wheels of her chair, her expression unusually mature for someone her age. Outside, other kids played with donated toys, but Aylar was quiet, still, and oddly graceful in her loneliness. Something about her struck him with a mix of curiosity and an unfamiliar tug of emotion. He approached the administrator afterward, asking who she was, and learned the girl's reality: poor, disabled, struggling, and caring for an ailing mother who could barely afford her own medical treatments. That night, He found himself unable to sleep, his mind returning to the haunting image of a child too familiar with suffering, too practiced in silence. The idea of adoption, once dismissed as a publicity tactic, began to feel like something more. When Miriam was discharged days later, weak but alive, she learned there were sponsors offering help with therapy fees for Aylar, and at first she didn't understand why. It wasn't until the billionaire himself visited their shrunken apartment that the truth emerged. Aylar stared at him from her wheelchair, her heart racing with confusion, fear, and disbelief. She knew he was powerful, important, and someone whose presence didn't belong in their poverty-stricken hallway. When he expressed interest in adopting her, her breath caught mid-air. It should have felt like a miracle. A billionaire wanting to rescue her from poverty, offering medical care, access to top rehabilitation centers, a luxurious life she could only dream of. But instead, her heart twisted painfully. The thought of leaving her mother, her only anchor, her only reason to keep fighting, was unimaginable. As Zayden spoke, describing the opportunities she would have, Ayla felt tears sting her eyes. She thought about her mother struggling every day, coughing through the nights, sacrificing every breath for her. How could she abandon the very person who had carried her through pain, fed her when she had nothing left, and wiped her tears with a strength that defied exhaustion? The billionaire offered her a new world, but she knew that accepting it meant leaving her mother to drown in her own hardship. So she gathered the courage to speak, her voice trembling but firm, telling him not to adopt her, but to adopt her mother instead so that they could both be saved. The request hit him like a storm. Never in his life had anyone asked him something so selfless, so pure, so painfully honest. Zayden was speechless for the first time in years as the weight of her words settled in his chest. Ayla didn't want luxury or wealth for herself. She wanted a chance for her mother to live without breaking her body for a few miserable dollars. She wanted her mom to be loved, protected, and cared for. The billionaire realized then that her heart was the most precious thing in the room, worth more than every company he owned combined. He promised to think about it and left with thoughts heavier than steel. That night, lying awake on his king-sized bed in a silent mansion, he realized he envied the little girl's emotional richness. She had almost nothing, yet she possessed a love so powerful it shook him to his core. The next day, he returned, not with a single decision, but with a completely different plan. Instead of adopting either of them, he offered to take responsibility for both as their legal guardian and lifelong supporter. With this arrangement, Miriam would receive medical care, stable income, therapy, and a secure home, while Ayla would receive high-quality treatment and education without being separated from her mother. The offer came not as a publicity stunt, but as a sincere choice from a man transformed by a child's selflessness. Miriam tried to refuse at first, trembling with the instinctive pride of a mother who had always fought alone. But Zayden gently made her understand that accepting help wasn't weakness. It was giving her daughter a chance at a better life. Life slowly began to change. Ayla's therapy improved drastically. Specialist doctors worked with her daily, helping her muscles strengthen. Her wheelchair was replaced with a modern model, smooth and silent. Miriam received proper medical examinations for the first time in years. Her lungs began to heal, her body regained strength, and her spirit slowly started to lift. Zayden visited them often, initially out of responsibility, but soon out of genuine affection. He found himself laughing for the first time in years as Ayla shared stories, teasing him about his stiff expression and formal way of speaking. Miriam, once frail and timid around him, began to open up too, her warmth filling spaces he didn't know were empty. The apartment they once struggled in was replaced with a comfortable home near his estate, ensuring they were close yet free. Months passed, and a beautiful sense of family blossomed between them, quiet, steady, and real. Ayla's legs grew stronger, and though she still relied on her wheelchair most of the time, she slowly began standing with assistance, taking a few shaky steps that made everyone cry with joy. Miriam, now healthier, found herself smiling more, cooking more, and living more than she had in years. And Zayden, he discovered something he thought he had lost forever, the ability to care deeply, to feel connected, to let love return to his life in ways he once thought impossible. If this story has touched your heart so far, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support brings more life-changing stories to the world. Still, the most heart-stopping moment arrived on an early winter morning when Aylar, supported by her therapist, stood again, not for herself, but to show Zayden and her mother the progress she had made. She whispered that she wanted to walk someday, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to stand tall beside the two people who had given her the courage to fight again. Zayden felt tears gather in his eyes, something he had not felt in over a decade, and Miriam hugged her daughter tightly, overwhelmed with pride. Before we end, please comment below what part of this story touched you the most. In time, their lives intertwined so naturally that people often assumed they were one family by blood, not by fate. The billionaire who once lived in silence now spent evenings listening to laughter echo through halls that were once painfully empty. And Aylar, the poor wheelchair girl who once believed the world had nothing left for her, found herself surrounded by love, healing, and hope she never thought she'd have. Her life became a testament to the power of selflessness. The moment she asked a billionaire to save her mother instead of her had changed all of their destinies forever. If this story moved you, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support truly helps bring more emotional and inspiring stories to life.